Hey, pop pickers, it's Sunday, 24th of April, 2022. This is Notcast, I think this is 195, and today I'm going to be talking about Metallica's third and a half and fourth albums, respectively the 598 EP and Justice for All. This is a doozy of an episode. I think doozy is a technical term, although using the word doozy makes me sound like the very old man that I am. I maybe should have a backwards baseball cap and go, "How do you do, fellow kids?" Who knows? So, 1988 is the start of when I became a Metallica fan, and this is the period where I got into the band. So you go back a little bit to late 1987, and my love affair with music had started in a way that I could not possibly have imagined. When I was growing up, I was not particularly, I didn't really enjoy the world that I lived in. I felt like I was a square peg in a round hole, and that somehow the world that I was living in was one that was designed for other people. That I was like a secret agent that had been parachuted undercover behind enemy lines, and somehow I had to blend in so I wasn't discovered. And if I didn't do that, that somehow my life would unravel. And until I discovered music and films, the world didn't really make much sense to me. And in the world of films, there was the concept of a narrative, and the guy gets the girl and he kills the baddies and he saves the world and all that stuff. And I quite like the idea of a world that made sense, because being 13 or 14 years old, the world I was living didn't make a huge amount of sense. And it was a little bit weird because life was just a bunch of stuff that happened. I woke up, I went to school, I went home, and that was it. When you're 13 or 14, you don't have any agency, power, or control over your life, generally speaking. I was used to being told what to do and what to think by other people. I remember the first time where I exhibited any sense of self control was when they told me I had to have braces. And I was like, "Have you seen me? I mean, obviously you can see me, but I was like, have you seen me?" I was like a 13-year-old kid with a I had hair in those days as well. And I basically could have had bully me tattooed on my forehead. And I'm like, I've got enough reasons to be bullied by people. There's no way I'm having braces. And now I just have British teeth and I don't smile. I end up looking like Austin Powers, maybe from just down there. Maybe. Maybe this part of me is Mr. Evil. Maybe that part of me is Austin Powers with the British teeth. Who knows? Um, well, I really gravitated towards the music and film soundtracks, and then from that music, and then later I started hanging around with the kids with the black t-shirts or the white t-shirts, with band names on, who had long hair and leather jackets, Dennis and Clemmy and Adam and people like that. People you don't know unless you're watching this, and I haven't seen you for 30 years. The last time I saw you was probably coming out of Excel's nightclub in Birmingham in about, let's think, August, September 1991. And XL's, by the way, was, according to the Guardian magazine interview with Blaze Bayley, the third vocalist in Iron Maiden, the best building in the world in 1995. So I can assure you, I was going to the right places. And the four of us, we hung out and we kind of just went round to each other's houses and we listened to music and we had cassette tapes, and we would record live shows that have been on the BBC Radio Rock Show hosted by Alan Fluff Freeman, a man who does not look like he loved heavy metal. And then we would listen to the albums and we'd just sit in and we'd read the shared copy of Kerrang, and we'd read this stuff, and the idea of being able to actually buy the records or being able to go and see the band seems ridiculous. What a crazy, stupid idea that was. And so for me, I came into Metallica. That sounds awful. Probably early 1988. For two C90 cassettes, by the way, you could get Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and the fourth album, although it was the third and a half album, the 598 EP. And on the back of the 598 EP, because this was only $5.98, and it was only 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes long, you could put the Metallica B-sides on there as well. So those would have been Am I Evil, and the other cover version that's on the B-sides of Creeping Death, and all that type of stuff. Blitzkrieg, I think it is. you know, and you could fill up 2 C90s and then 80 minutes of music that would change your world. Now, to me, the idea that Cliff was ever a member of Metallica is a historical fact in the way that Ian Curtis was once a member of Joy Division. It's something I have no memory of. I mean, for all I know, when Metallica played the Birmingham Odeon in 1986, I might have walked right past them. Well, but I was 12 years old, 13 years old. I had no idea what was going on. Hairy rock dudes, isn't it? It was only later when, you know, all the walls turned to glass and I was able to see for miles and miles and miles, um, that this type of stuff became. And I had no idea that these were cover versions. I was just like, oh, this band's gone punky. And so the 598 EP, I think, was designed as a kind of like an interim stopgap kind of release, a release that put the band from their Master of Puppets period, got them into the concepts of recording with their new bass player, Jason Newsted. There he is, one of the best bass players. There is certainly a fantastic choice for the band, and a man who has more integrity than almost anyone apart from Henry Rollins and myself. You know, obviously that's a humble brag, but so be it. And the 598 EP is I think it's a brilliant record, but it's over in a flash. It really is. So one of the tasks which happened after Cliff had died and the band recruited Jason in 1986 was they were going to go into the studio. They were going to record a series of cover versions for an EP that was going to pad out their touring period, and they were going to I think they asked Jason to take egg carton boxes and glue them to the wall as baffles to present the kind of, you know, the echo coming back from the walls. And so the band went into their new homemade studio, presumably in a garage, because this is called the Garage Days Revisited EP. The B-side of Creeping Death, I think, is called the Garage Days Revisited side with Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg on it. And this is the revisited. And so, of course, the next one will be revisited. And record five covers, which the band have mostly played live to this day. And so they recorded a cover version of Helpless. Hang on, let's find out. I better look at the credits actually on this. Helpless, which is written by Harrison Tatler. I think that's Diamond Head. The Small Hours, which is Holocaust, I think, whoever they are, or whoever that is. I really probably should know, but I don't. And then we have The Wait by Killing Joke, who I have seen. Crash Course in Brain Surgery. Don't know who did that. And then Last Caress and Green Hell by Danzig. I've definitely seen them play Last Caress. I've seen them play, Helpless as well. And I think the very end of this EP has a few bars of Iron Maiden's Run to the Hills on it. So this was a nice kind of low stakes way of getting Jason back into recording and into the band indeed. And it had been and gone very quickly. The band followed it up with some touring. And they did have some of those shows on the Master of Puppets box set, but also in 2020 they did the Metallica Vinyl Club, and the Metallica Vinyl Club was 4 vinyl records sent to you direct from Metallica's own pressing plant in Sausalito, I think California, and this features 2 tracks recorded at the Monsters of Rock Festival in August 1987, and just so that you know, these are like one-off subscription things. You pay for a subscription and you get a 7-inch single. You get a download card here. You get a 7-inch here, which has some text on it, and you get some ephemera, which is a lovely word, and Metallica are very keen on this stuff. This is the poster, which came with the 7-inch. If you want to get this 7-inch now, I think you have to pay an extortionate amount of money on Discogs. And the Metallica Vinyl Club was repeated for 2022. It was paused in 2021 because of COVID and manufacturing and shipping delays, but they repeated it for 2022, and I was quite happy to sign up for that. It would have been $76, by the way, for 4 12-inches, which is 20 quid each or thereabouts. But then the shipping costs to the UK for those 4 12-inches came to $80. I looked at it and I thought, I'm not paying £140 for 4 12-inch singles. That's ridiculous. You know, I paid £140 for the Kill 'Em All box set, which has gazillions of 12 inches and LPs and CDs and books and things in it. I'm not paying that much for 12 inches, and I think the band subscription numbers are down considerably as a result. So we have the that was the live shows which they did. Then they went into the studio to record the next album. So following on, hot on the heels of the 598 EP, here's the 1987 CD. I think this cost me £6 actually, import taxes. And there's the 12-inch. The band went into the studio with I'm not quite sure who actually, and they came out with their fourth studio LP proper, released in September 1988, and Justice for All. Let's look at the hype stick on here. This is a 2014 Blackened Records repress, by the way. I do have the original Elektra CD here. I did have it on tape, loser that I was, but I moved away from tapes pretty quickly as soon as I could afford CDs. And the 2014 vinyl edition of it is as good as any one that you can get. So let's go into the vinyl version and find out what we have. So my memories of the original release of this LP are very hazy now. It is 34 years old since this album came out. I think everything apart from the copyright information is correct and accurate. I don't think the original 1988 copy had 2 inner sleeves. I think it had paper sleeves on there, and we have obviously sides 1 and sides 2 and sides 3 and sides 4 of the black vinyl version here. But this is very, very definitely how I remember the LP in 1988, and it's one of the best Metallica albums it is. I think it takes the template which the band had kind of perfected with Master of Puppets and just took it just a little bit further, probably to its natural conclusion, because the album after this, you'll have heard of that album, it's called Metallica, ditches the songwriting style that they use for this. So, And Justice for All is probably the ultimate conclusion of what I call Metallica's first golden era. And the reason I loved Metallica at that point, wasn't such a big fan of them in the 90s. And that's not because I'm a snob, and just I didn't like the music as much. Is that they did this kind of like fantastic, complicated prog thrash, and I didn't know anybody else that quite did it quite this way. And so the songs were often made up of 4 or 5 parts. So when you're writing a song, for example, you'll write a verse, chorus, intro, bridge, outro, guitar solo, whatever. So with Metallica, the idea that those parts have to have a logical progression doesn't necessarily happen. So maybe they wrote, so let's say there's 9 songs on this album, and it runs at 65 minutes. The shortest song on this record, by the way, is 5 minutes 12 seconds. And the longest one, the title track, is it's To Live Is To Die is 9 minutes 48. These are not short songs, these are epics. You know, they're kind of taking a cue from bands like Led Zeppelin, is that they're just writing great songs. They're not necessarily writing songs with the ideas of getting them on the radio, although they aren't afraid of having hits. But at the same point, they're also kind of going, well, if you've got complete artistic freedom and control, you've got a responsibility to do exactly what you want, and to be able, as long as you can articulate what you want and how you want to do it, then that is the right thing to do. And here, the band really did take it as far as they could. So the songs had all the classic templates of classic Metallica in the 80s. So it had multiple parts, tempo shifts, often jarring transitions between parts that also sounded absolutely, seamless, and they weren't afraid to move parts of the songs around, and they weren't afraid to write long songs. I mean, some of these songs, And Justice for All, the title track, 9 minutes 44, To Live Is To Die, 9 minutes 48. These are long songs, and I think maybe if you'd played And Justice for All 118 times in a year, you might go, really don't want to hear that song again for a while. Completely understandable. But at the same point, these songs were tested on humans for longevity. So sometimes, I think one of the things that makes an album really good is its revisability factor, or revisitability. That's not a word. But like, what makes you want to come back to the album when you've heard the album once and you go, I need to hear that album again. And a great album has that compelling sense of needing to revisit it, to re-watch it, in the way that great films aren't great films that you watch once. They're great films that you watch 11 times. And I remember watching James Bond's Moonraker 11 times during one summer holiday when I was about 13, because it was the only James Bond film I had on VHS. That might be why it's my favourite James Bond film. But also, it's a film that you can watch 11 times once a week for a whole summer, and you don't get bored of it until maybe week 10, and that's pretty good going for a film. You know, there are other great films that I've seen once that I will never ever see again. Requiem for a Dream is an incredible film, but it does feel like being punched in the face repeatedly for about 90 minutes, and it's not a film that I can go back and revisit. This album has the re-listen factor in spades, tons and tons of it, because the songs are dense, they're rewarding, they're multiple structures, and there are parts between the songs that call back and into each other. And the album opens with Blackened. Blackened is perhaps one of the very few co-writes between Lars, James and Jason wrote the riff for Blackened. So if you think about the opening riff to Blackened, that is Jason's riff. And what a way to announce your presence on an album than that. Now, the power dynamic inside Metallica changed significantly when And Justice for All came out. I think when Cliff was a member of the band, it felt to me that Metallica's composition and structure was roughly similar to the Beatles, in so much as you had kind of like Lars and James as main songwriters, Cliff Burton kind of holding a George Harrison type role, and Kirk not writing as much material as the other members, kind of like the Ringo, but a really good Ringo, by the way. And when Cliff left, or died, is probably the best way to describe it, Metallica became effectively the Beatles of thrash metal. Yes, they are that good, but also honed around a songwriting duo of Ulrich and Hetfield, which didn't really have much space for anybody else in it. Kirk's role in the band obviously maintains itself as kind of like somebody that added colour and texture to the songs, added solos in, maybe contributed riffs, but it wasn't a dominant creative force or vision in there, but kind of like the glue that held everything together. Kind of think of it the butter in the sandwich, so to speak. And because Burton, I think, had had a major role in the band's creative personality before then, when he wasn't present, obviously Jason had no frame of reference to base it against. He couldn't say, well, previously it was like this, so why isn't it like this now? He only understood how the band works without Cliff in it. And so to me, I think although Cliff was probably an equal, Jason wasn't, and that's a shame, because he's an incredible bass player, very talented man, lives and breathes metal. You cut through him and he's got like steel in his bones, like some kind of Wolverine. And where Burton's writing and Burton's bass lines were quite poppy, they were quite direct. Jason's bass parts were more atonal, more thrashy, more riffy, and they didn't quite have the same background. Yeah, Jason was brought up listening to Lynyrd Skynyrd and stuff like that, and Cliff was listening to classical music, and that's going to give you a different approach melodically to the sound of the band. So the bass that we've got on And Justice for All, and I have to point out, by the way, this album is terribly produced. My band's demo tapes, which is one boombox in a corner 25 years ago, sounded almost as good as And Justice for All, and the band probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars recording this, and the production on And Justice for All is hot fucking garbage. It's terrible. It's one of the worst produced albums I've ever heard. The guitar sound is very thin, it's very rattly, it's not got any presence in there, the drums sound tinny, the bass is barely present. I mean, they're obviously fan-made remasters of the album which have fixed the bass issue, called And Justice for Jason, but it's a terribly produced album. It's one of the worst produced albums ever, which is a shame, because otherwise this would probably be my favourite Metallica record. But it really does sound like two bald men fighting over a comb, the way that the production is on this album. It is one of the worst produced albums that's ever hit mass production, and I cannot pretend otherwise. But the differences that we had in the band pre or during Cliff and post Cliff are quite significant. Jason's bass generally follows and complements the rhythm guitar parts which have been recorded by James. Cliff's parts were often dance around and aside and near the rhythm guitar medley, but also acts as almost a second rhythm guitarist part. And you think about some of the greatest bass players of all time, particularly I'm thinking Andrew Rourke, Peter Hook, Cliff Burton are the most obvious ones I can think of, Geddy Lee as well. The bass lines that we have there don't sound like they're replicating the rhythm guitar. It sounds like they're actually a duet with the rhythm guitar, whereas Jason's bass on this album is largely following the rhythm guitar parts. And I think part of that is down to the production and the recording of the album is Jason not having had any experience of major label recording, is that he was probably, as I understand it, basically said, you're going to do your bass parts in a day. There you go. Boom. 8, 9 tracks done. Finished. Over. So that, for some people, and Justice for All may only be one day's work, which is pretty amazing, but also kind of indicates a lack of care and attention. The band really should have spent more time, and I think been more respectful to Jason and the contribution he could make, because he could have been an equal of Hetfield and Ulrich in the band in terms of a creative contributor, and they weren't necessarily interested in hearing some of the stuff that Jason's done after he's left the band, because yes, Jason left Metallica in the year 2001. It really was Metallica's loss there. But this is I think it's an incredible album that's badly produced. And I cannot be ambiguous in any way around that. It's got several classics, which not only do the band play live to this day, but I could do all of these songs. If I could play guitar and you said play Blackened, I could probably do it. I could definitely play Blackened on drums, although admittedly I'm not the best drummer in the world. I would get quite tired because it's a kind of a dense percussion track there. But these songs are memorable and they stick with you, and they're probably catchier than The Common Cold. So the only thing I would change about the album, apart from the production, is the sequence. So there's Harvester of Sorrow, which was the first single from the album. Side 3, track 2, middle of the LP. I would put that second, and I would put the And Justice for All title track in the spot where Harvester of Sorrow sits. That's the only thing I would change. Otherwise, this is perfect, actually, and from a lyrical perspective as well. It's a confident, strong, mature album. The lyrics that Metallica have got, and I think they did simplify their lyrical approach for the subsequent album. This is probably the peak of the lyric writing in Metallica as well, because the lyric writing that we had for Kill 'Em All was largely drinking and dragons. The lyric writing that we had for Ride the Lightning was also, fair chunk of dragons and biblical imagery there. Master of Puppets started to deal with issues like control and power and identity and self-actualization. And then Justice for All really is the peak of that lyrical approach. So certainly as a 13, 14-year-old kid in suburban Birmingham, the home of Black Sabbath and Judas Priest, I identified very, very closely with the lyrics that we had in this album. Lyrics that were around things like power and control and identity and uneven power relationships and domestic and financial abuse. Lyrics that were around despair and lyrics that were around not knowing your place in the world and the core part of your identity. Who am I? Where am I? Why do I feel this way? What am I going to do next? Those were the kind of lyrics that we were dealing with, and some of the other lyrics certainly are, very interesting around people's kind of self-actualization, or the way in which people view themselves. So One, for example, obviously a classic that somehow, when I first heard it, I would never have thought that 34 years after I first heard One, I never would have thought it's going to be regarded as like the Stairway to Heaven for the 80s. The video for One, by the way, the third single released from the album, features excerpts from the film, I think, Janie Got Her Gun. And it's around a man that's had his arms and legs and limbs blown off in a war, and is having to live with being locked inside his own body as a heavily disabled person with post-traumatic stress disorder and shell shock. The kind of happy stuff that you're going to make your first top 40 single about, of course. But these are lyrics around, who are you when the thing that you define yourself by ceases to exist? What is it that constitutes who you are? And those are the kind of lyrics which kind of run deep in this record. So Blackened starts off with perhaps the first environmentally friendly lyric that I can ever remember hearing. Obviously, at the moment, things like the carbon footprint, the individual personal carbon responsibility, the environment and long-term sustainability is a really important and key part of the dialogue around sustainable energy and the future of the planet. At the time, this was, tree hugging hippie shit, because the Earth was going to last forever, guys. Mankind will control, and nature will do as it's bloody well told by man. But Blackened is a song about the effectively the eco apocalypse, as I understand it. About the end of and the change of the environments and things like flooding, fire, famine, pestilence, death, the end of the world as self-inflicted by mankind's greed and the endless and unsatiable maw of capitalism. Next week's meeting of Let's Overthrow the Employer Parasites, I will tell you about wage slavery, kids. All right, I won't, actually. But then we also have And Justice for All, the second track on the album, which is an epic, really an epic. It's 10 minutes long. It's not 10 minutes long like a Pet Shop Boys remix. It's 10 minutes long, where you could probably take 6 minutes out and it'd be okay. And it's got some ridiculous name about the trouser enthusiast autoerotic decapitation mix that runs for the length of your train journey to and from work. And Justice for All is a song about, and I think it's inspired by an Al Pacino film. I think it's inspired by Serpico, although I could be wrong. Or it might be inspired also by the film And All the President's Men, around the availability of justice and the fact that if you want to pursue justice in the courts, justice is not free; it comes at a price, and everyone has their price bob. It's one of those things where you kind of go, well, actually, access to justice and satisfaction for people that have broken the law is out of the reach of the vast majority of people on the planet, because they can't afford to pay lawyers and solicitors and legal representation hundreds of pounds an hour. So, And Justice for All is around that, and obviously the idea of the statue of the Lady of Liberty, where the scales of justice are tipped and they are filled full of banknotes. The idea that concept of life, liberty, and justice for all is perverted by the fact that access to money has defined it. Welcome to the capitalist system, comrades. Third song on the album is Eye of the Beholder, the only Metallica single I don't own, by the way. It was the second single that was released from the album. It was only released in America as a cassette and a 7-inch single, I think, and that's why I never got it then, and I don't have it now. But it's not been played live, Eye of the Beholder, since 1989, which is a shame. It's a great track, actually. I just think the band have got sick of it, having played it so much. And in 2020, Lars says he didn't want to hear the song ever again. Well, I guess since he writes the set list, he gets to choose whether he gets to do that or not. And obviously the fourth track on the album is One, which I will mention shortly. We then have The Shortest Straw. We have Harvester of Sorrow, which is... I think Harvester of Sorrow is a classic Metallica track, but one that also has come to define the band. I mean, certainly it's an underrated song. It's great live. It runs at a certain kind of very threatening tempo. It's got the second heaviest silence in recorded history. The first heaviest silence is, I think, Sad But True, the break before the drums come back in. But Harvester of Sorrow really reminds me of Sad But True as well, in the way that it kind of works and operates at a certain rhythm that's kind of threatening, kind of imposing, and works towards creating an air of general unease and malaise, which is, of course, one of the things that Metallica were very good at that point in time. And Harvester of Sorrow is a song that effectively is about domestic violence. There's the line, drink up, shoot in, let the beatings begin, distributor of pain, your loss becomes my gain, anger, misery, you'll suffer unto me. And you can imagine that old cliche that damaged people damage people. And the lyric to Harvester of Sorrow is kind of going, well, when somebody's having a bad day at work or whatever, or they're angry that they don't feel that they've got what they think their life should be, and so they take it out on the other humans that are around them, and of course that perpetuates the cycle of misery. And if there isn't a Metallica song called The Cycle of Misery, they can have it for me, as long as they give me a thanks credit in the album booklet, and maybe some cash and some guest list tickets. that will be fine. We also have The Frayed Ends of Sanity, the last song from the album to be premiered live, so 16 years, actually not 26 years after the album was released. Metallica did a by request tour where fans voted for the songs that they wanted to hear played live. The Frayed Ends of Sanity got its debut on the 2014 tour, 26 years after it was released. We then have the penultimate song is To Live Is To Die. A vast, sprawling instrumental, touched by the fingerprints of Cliff Burton, who also, I think, wrote the lyrics. And it's the kind of song that's very similar to something like Orion, which is a multi-part instrumental epic. And then the last song is Dyer's Eve, which again wasn't played live on the tour. It was only played live in 2004. And Dyer's Eve is almost like the flip side of Harvester of Sorrow. Harvester of Sorrow is a song that maybe dispassionately describes the effects of domestic violence. Dyer's Eve is a song written from a frightened child towards his parents around his experiences as a child coming into the world, and the death of the parents as well, around how a child might feel when their parents die, which I'm afraid to say, unless your parents outlive you, that is something that you are going to have to experience. I experienced the death of a parent in 1995, and that was quite an experience, not one that I particularly enjoyed at all, which maybe I'll talk about at another point. But Dyer's Eve certainly had a different context after I heard it in there. That is And Justice for All, the fourth Metallica album. I fucking love it. If you haven't already worked out. Certainly for me, the version of Metallica that exists in my mind when I think about Metallica is the Metallica of the And Justice for All period. And that is the Metallica that was playing the Hammersmith Odeon, the Birmingham Odeon, playing to 3,000-4,000 people, and hadn't had any hit singles, because hit singles are for losers. Okay? Of course, that's not necessarily true. But in my mind, I was like, I'll see Metallica on the next tour when I've got more pocket money. The next tour was 4 years later, and they were playing 2 nights at the Birmingham NEC Arena, and they were doing so on the back of the album Metallica, which sold quite a few copies indeed. Now, the first commercially released single from the album, Harvester of Sorrow. Here is the 12-inch single. Backed with cover versions of Budgie's Bread Fan and Diamond Head's The Prince, and it was engineered by Mike Klink, and Mike Klink did a couple of days' work on the album to start off with, but then replaced by Flemming Rasmussen, so these are pretty rough mixes on the B-sides, but as I said, Harvester of Sorrow is an absolute classic track. Also gave us a great number of fantastic t-shirts, not the one I'm wearing right now though. And that was the first single from the album. Second one was Eye of the Beholder, as I've previously mentioned. The third one, this is where it gets busy, boys and girls. The third one is the song which was released and sold quite a lot of copies. The first proper Metallica hit, so to speak. One. Here's a 1989 12-inch single of One. Backed with live versions of For Whom the Bell Tolls and Sanitarium, recorded at the Reunion Arena, Dallas, February 5th, 1989. This is pretty much the Stairway to Heaven of Metallica's discography. It is a dense multi-part epic that starts slow. It's about a crisis of identity and ends up in this bonkers thrash out kind of track. It's absolutely brilliant live, by the way. Also, the drum part of it, although it's not intentional, the drum part of it kind of resembles the drum part from a military marching band. Those were the drum parts that were put to the song before the lyrics were added to the song. Like most Metallica demos, the lyrics at the demo stage were na 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 na, and not any reference at all to Hey Jude. There is no Metallica song about that. Although there is a Metallica stroke Beatles cover band that covered Beatles songs in a Metallica style called Beatallica, that were quite big, or not quite big, but they were moderately big in the 90s. And we also had, here's a reissue 12-inch of One, which is to all intents and purposes identical to the original. And this reissue 12-inch was also packaged with this 12-inch single, The Good, the Bad and the Live, which was only available in a 1990 reissue box set of singles. Here it is, the 6.5 anniversary 12-inch collection, The Good, the Bad and the Live. This is 6 12-inches, the 5 commercially released ones, plus the Live in Seattle EP, which I just showed you. So that'll be Jumping the Fire, Creeping Death, the 598 EP, Harvester of Sorrow 1, and then finally The Good, the Bad and the Live 4-track EP, which says it has Harvester of Sorrow 1 and Bread Fun on it. I think it also has Last Caress as a hidden track on track 4. But the soundtrack to the show, the Seattle Coliseum show, got a second life. We also had a CD single for 1. Here is the Japanese CD single for 1. The reason I bought the Japanese CD single is because it had 2 tracks that weren't on the UK 3-track CD single. So this has Bread Fan, which wasn't previously on CD actually. It was the first place this was on CD, I think. And it also had the demo version of 1. And the demo version of 1 was, I think, only on the gatefold 10-inch single of 1. So this was the first CD issue for 2 of the Metallica tracks. And of course, there was a 7-inch of 1. Here it is, backed with Seek and Destroy, 8 minutes 42. Which, of course, if you had a 7-inch, if you had a record player, what you'd often have, you'd have the automatic cut-off when you listen to the 7-inch single. And the automatic cut-off would stop when it thought the track had got to an end. 2-track 7-inch singles, and this single hardly ever got to the end of the song. So very frequently my live versions of Seek and Destroy ended with the thing just seizing up, just going about half a minute from the end. So that's why I bought the 12-inch. I also think 4-track 7 inches, things like Depeche Mode's Blasphemous Rumours, as Kingmaker single that had 3 B-sides on it. Those were the type of things that never made it to the end of the track. About this point, Metallica also were amongst the most bootleg bands in existence. And here is one of the many bootlegs from that period. This is recorded in Indianapolis at the Market Square Arena on the 24th of November 1988. It's not particularly good, but it's good to have. This is a 1989 CD bootleg of the band in Osaka, May 17th, 1989. Double CD. It's called Welcome to the Fun Palace. It is a crappy audience recording, I'm afraid to say, ladies and jelly spoons. It really is, but it's a nice bit of packaging there. You've got the CD in one, you've got like a little plastic tray. Clearly, this is a premium product designed to extract from you lots of money, and so therefore is a bigger package than it normally would, could, or should be. But it's a Metallica bootleg from the 80s. Although, of course, you don't doubt that I was there. The only thing I didn't do in the 80s was see Metallica because I couldn't afford £7.50 or £9 to see them. Well, it's a heck of a lot more expensive now. You probably couldn't even get a beer at a Metallica show for £9 now, and it would come in a shitty plastic cup as well that you couldn't even throw to the stage. 1989 also saw the recording of the first Metallica concert VHS, although it didn't get a release until 1993. This is the DVD edition of 1993's Live Shit, Binge and Purge box set, and this features 5 discs on it, 3 audio discs from Mexico in 1993, DVD from the Sports Palace in San Diego in 1992, but also, and let's make sure that I can find it correctly, the DVD of Seattle 1989 on there. So that was the first Metallica show that was officially released, which you could watch. Although I had an eye-opening experience watching BBC Two's Heavy Metal Heaven series on British television in around about January-February 1989, where they broadcast 30 minutes of Metallica live at the London Hammersmith Odeon, a venue of dreams, the venue that in fact has given us one of the very best live albums ever recorded, Metallica Motorhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith, although some of that wasn't recorded at Hammersmith. Sorry about that, people. Never let the truth get in the way of a good lie. We also had in 1988 the 30th anniversary box set of Justice for All. This is a monster. Metallica do the gold standard for reissue box sets, by the way. This one is number 20,368 of 30,000. This one definitely cost more than £9. If I could send money back to me in time to go and see Metallica, I most definitely would do that. This is an incredible box set, and because I am running short on time, I'm only going to race quickly through the contents that we've got on it. Here I have a bootleg CD of the Metallica Fan Club 2001 album, recorded in Dallas. Dallas has not been reissued, by the way, it's not on there. We have a lovely sheet of paper. We have a book. I'll get to the book shortly. We also have a lyric booklet here that has handwritten lyrics for each one of the songs on the album. We have the Shortest Straw Puzzhead art print. We have the vinyl edition of And Justice for All. I've also included in here, by the way, a bootleg coloured vinyl version of And Justice for All that I picked up many years ago. Seattle 1989 does get a release on here as a 3 LP set, so that is the audio for the DVD, which is in the live ship Binge and Purge box set. This is a fantastic, phenomenal live document, I've got to tell you, and it's mastered fantastically. It's just bloody brilliant. I know it's a very expensive set, but it really is, frankly, the bee's knees there. This is an incredible live album, one of the best live albums of all time. We have a reproduction of the 10-inch picture disc of One, which is backed with, I think, the album version of One and a live version of Seek and Destroy. This version, my record player does not cut off halfway through, which is good news. I had something that fell over. I don't know what it is. Here's some reproduction patches. And we also have lots and lots of lovely CDs. So we have the remaster of the album, And Justice for All. We have riffs, jams and demos. These are fascinating to hear. Some of them are only 20 seconds long, but you can hear the original tapes that the band went in to try and find out, well, where's the riffs, and put the riffs together and create them. There's a lot of tracks on there. They're maybe the type of thing that you'll listen to twice in your life. The first time you hear them, you'll go, do I want to hear that again? And then you go, nope. And then you'll listen to it again about 3 years later and go, still don't want to listen to it again, but absolutely fascinating to hear. And you can hear that some of the tracks had extra riffs which were only actually used in live versions and weren't used in the studio recordings at all. You've got a CD of interviews here with Jason, James, Monsters of Rock, Kirk and Lars. And here we get into some of the gold. Rough mixes from the vault. So we have rough mixes of every track recorded for the album. I think near enough, maybe missing one of the songs, as well as Bread Fan and the Prince. Actually, it's not missing one of the songs. It's got a rough mix of every track on it. Here is another one. This is Live at the Troubadour, West Hollywood, 1988. I think this is the first show of the tour. So it's a warm-up show for the rest of the tour. And it's also got all the B-sides on the second CD. So the live versions from Seattle and Dallas, and the versions Seattle that were on the 6.5 Years box set. But this is a first show from the tour, recorded straight from the desk. Perfectly prominent Metallica live release. Next we have the Hammersmith Odeon, London. This is the show that changed my life because it was on BBC's Heavy Metal Heaven. This is the audio version of the show, and it features radio edits as extra tracks alongside most of the show. Now the track And Justice for All on here is cut off halfway through the recording. It fades out. So if you're particularly anal like me, you will take the version of And Justice for All that was broadcast on the BBC, which is actually from a different recording, but from the same set of shows, and you can meld the two together so you create the whole show. But there you go. We have the Long Beach Arena, 1988, December the 7th. Again, a mixing desk recording from the band's archive. And Long Beach Arena, of course, is the venue of dreams where Iron Maiden recorded the incredible Live After Death album. We also have a set here and camcorders for all. So we have 2 DVDs One is camcorder footage, and the other one is the Mountain View Shoreline Amphitheatre show on September the 15th, 1989. That might be the last show of the tour. If not, it's very close to it. We also have Live at the Stone Ballroom, which is an audience recording of the band playing a very small show to about 200, 300 people in the midst of the tour. And we also have interviews and live footage that was shot on camcorders. So you do get one pro shot live show in the box set. This is the gold standard for box sets. Metallica do it better than anybody else. Of course, that comes at a price, but it's possibly worth it. It's not as if Metallica are putting out that many new albums these days, are they? Nope, not at all. So that is And Justice for All, the fourth Metallica album, one of the best albums there is. Changed my life substantially when it came out. One of my favourite Metallica albums. I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and I strongly recommend it to anyone. Although, of course, the drum production is frankly shocking, and the bass ain't that great either. The songs are what matter. They're better on stage than they were on the record. But And Justice for All, the fourth Metallica album, absolutely love it to bits. And whilst I very quickly remember, the last thing I haven't shown you is the booklet. And since I'm running out of seconds, let's just pretend that's what it looks like. It's all full of good stuff. These Metallica box sets really are the definitive last words in reissues. Nobody does them better. Although my wallet certainly wishes that some people did them cheaper. And the last thing that dropped out, a reproduction Captain Crunch Metallica lanyard from the tour. So, take care of yourselves. Stay beautiful. I will see you all soon. Have a lovely time in the meantime, and take care. And as Alan Fluff Freeman said, if you love someone, tell them before it's too late. Good night, pop pickers. Ciao.